I really like the way that it's not just an island sitting in the clouds. It's actually like a whole nother part of the world that was developed and created specifically for this arc and this adventure that we're on. One Piece, Chapter 238, Heaven's Gate.
Well, this is certainly a fun one, I tell ya. Well, hello, my brothers and sisters of the Nerd Nation. I, as always, am Jim, here to bring you another review on the awesome, the awe-inspiring, the heavenly tale of One Piece. Our last chapter, of course, saw us with the Straw Hats being attacked by a strange creature while they were in the Sea of Clouds, and ultimately being saved by the Sky Knight, which is all he introduced himself as. So that's where things left off, and that's right where things pick up. Certainly there's a lot, there's more than meets the eye to this whole Skypiea thing. I was under the impression that it was just like, boom, we're going to go up a geyser and land on an island. It's a whole nother world up there, so very neat stuff, and very cool to see how intricately designed this was, and how well thought out. So anyway, so this Sky Knight winds up talking with them a bit, and he says, okay, well, he must have left, so obviously he scared away, or whatever. The other guy lost interest, the one that he came out and attacked and saved them, and they're like, oh, thank you for saving us, mister, you know, and he's like, no, it's fine, it's my duty, right? And then it's real comical because you see, you know, Luffy and Sanji and Zoro all like, man, I can't believe I got beat, you know. Robin says what I had thought in the last chapter. He said it's probably just because of the thin air, you know. So obviously that is something that, you know, that they're how many ever thousands of feet they are up above. So then the Sky Knight winds up, you know, telling them, he says, yeah, you know, he says, matter of fact, are you people from the Blue Sea? And they're like, what? And he's like, the Blue Sea down below. And Luffy's like, oh yeah, I get it, you know. So anyway, there's the Blue Sea down below, and then up here there is, you know, there's this sea that they're in, the White Sea or whatever, and that one is 23,000 feet above sea level. So, you know, obviously whatever that works out to, 4 miles, 5 miles, so pretty damn high. And he says, and most Blue Sea people can't handle the air up here, you know. And then the upper stratum of the White Sea is 33,000 feet. So they're like, whoa, hold on a second, there's more? You know, so it's actually pretty cool how it's laid out. So then all of a sudden, Luffy's just like, oh, I'm already starting to feel better. And Zoro's like, me too. And the Sky Knight's like, impossible, what the hell? And then he's like, how did you, so then he goes and he says, okay, well, because Chopper's asking him, you know, who was that guy and everything else. And he says, I'm sure you have a bunch of questions, but first, let's get down to business, right? He says, you know, for my services, he says, one whistle will be 5 million X tolls. And I was like, what the hell? What are you talking about, you know? And so he's like, and they're like, what do you mean we don't have any money? What the hell's an X toll, you know? And he's like, didn't you come by way of the, you know, the West Cliff or whatever, something like that, the West Peak? And they're like, no, there's another way to come here? And he's like, oh, so you got here by island hopping. And Nami's getting pissed. She's like, there's another way? He's like, don't tell me you came by that, you know, by that geyser and this and that, right? Which is what they obviously came by. And he's like, wow, there's still souls brave enough to, you know, to brave that have enough heroism and guts, basically, to brave that, you know? And it's funny because Nami's like, what, there was another way? And Luffy's like, yeah, it's okay, though, we made it, don't worry about it. And she's like, but there was another easier way. And he goes, did everyone make it, you know? And they said, well, yeah. And he goes, geez, he goes, well, you know, hardly anybody comes by way of the, you know, obviously the geyser or whatever, the knock-up stream anymore. You know, he goes, but a few brave warriors, you know, will come that way. And he goes, and it's one of those gambles where either you all make it or none of you do. So it's an all-or-nothing gamble, you know? He says, but each route has its own perils. So anyway, so what he winds up doing is he goes and throws them a whistle and says, here, you can have this by all rights. You should pay me 5 million X tolls, but I'll give this one to you. This one's on the house because of your courage and bravery, you know, coming by way of the knock-up stream, which I thought was kind of cool. So then he goes and he said, well, yeah, but, you know, he's going to go and leave. And he says, you blow that whistle and I'll come down from the heavens and come to your aid, you know. And so then as he's leaving, they're like, hey, you still didn't tell us your name. And he's like, I'm Ganfor, the Sky Knight. And then he says, and this is Pierre. And Pierre is cool. He's this bird, but he has the power of the horse fruit. So he goes and he can transform into a flying horse. And they're like, whoa, a Pegasus. And he's like, yes, a Pegasus. And I'm like, that's awesome, man. It reminds me of, of Clash of the Titans. And I'm not talking about like the new CG ones or whatever. Those were okay, Clash of the Titans, Wrath of the Titans. I'm talking about the old school from like the 1980s Clash of the Titans. If you ever get a chance to see it, it's probably on Netflix. I'm sure you can probably, you're all computer savvy people. You can just find it somewhere for free online. But very cool. Pegasus is in there and is front and center as one of the kind of main I guess, characters, you would say. So, and I always love that sort of Greek mythology type of stuff. So anyway, so he goes flying off, and they're like, okay. So then they're like, well, we still don't know anything. We don't know where we're going or what we're doing. And Luffy goes, well, let's blow the whistle and call the old man and ask him. And they're like, no, Luffy, you gotta save that. What if that guy attacks us again, you know? And so they're going, they see this, what looks to be a waterfall off in the distance, and they say, let's set sail for the waterfall, right? So as they start getting closer to the waterfall, they wind up seeing like a cloud bank in front of them, you know? And they're like, well, we don't know if that's clouds that have just risen up above this actual sea of clouds or what it is. So Luffy's like, well, you know, I'll stretch my arm out and see if I can pass my hand through it. He does, and his hand bounces off, and he's like, whoa, that was somewhat solid, right? So obviously they can't sail through it. Luffy then goes and jumps up onto it, and it's kind of like almost like a mattress or a trampoline or whatever, because you see him like, oh, it's so soft, and he's bouncing all around having a good time, you know? And that's what I love about this kid, is that he's just got such heart, you know, and just such a childlike wonderment, I guess you would say, of the world around him, that the dangers that are there, he's aware of them, but he doesn't let it affect how he acts and everything. That's what I really like. So anyway, so he's bouncing around the clouds and stuff, and then, so then they're obviously they can't, go right through these things. They're going to have to go around somehow. So Nami says, climb up to the top of that, the peak of that cloud bank, whatever you're on, and see if there's a way through. So as he gets up there, he goes and he says that he sees some huge gate that's right underneath the waterfall. You'll see it when you get through. He goes and guides them through, and it's real funny because he's, oh, left over here. I mean, right. And she's like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, let's call the old man. But anyway, he winds up guiding them through, and you see this overhead view of them kind of having to meander through this little maze-like formation of these clouds, these spongy-like clouds. And then all of a sudden, they approach this huge gate, and the gate says Heaven's Gate. And I'm like, okay, whatever, and all of a sudden you just hear like the, ooh, you see the light shining down on it. And and it's funny because we get Heaven's Gate, and Usopp's like freaking out. This is bad. And then Zoro's like, maybe we're already dead, And Sanji's like, yeah, that's more likely what happened. And Luffy's like, yay, all right, I finally got to heaven. So again, doesn't even care that he may be dead. They may have died in the knockup stream, and this is the gate to the afterlife. So anyway, so this weird gnarled up, kind of older looking, Luffy calls it a granny. I don't know if it's a man or a woman or what have you, but just this old prune face looking. Here we go. Well, Amazon. What is it? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Amazon Heaven's Gate Inspector. Let me see if I can get that up there so everybody can see. So there we are. Amazon, the pruny face woman man thing or whatever. But anyway, so. This thing says that this person says, are you here to are you here as tourists, or are you here to make war? And they're just like, what are you talking about, And he's like, well, whatever. Anyway, it's for entrance into the the upper stratosphere, the upper stratus, it's 1 billion X tolls per person, And they're like, what are you talking about? We don't have any money. And Luffy's like, oh, geez, is this an angel? I didn't know you had to pay to get into heaven. Just real funny banter going on back and forth between them. And they're like, we don't have any money, So it's funny because then the thing goes and asks him, and it says, well, do you want to pass? And they're like, well, yeah, sure, And then he's like, listen, I'm not here to judge you. I'm not like a gatekeeper nor a guardian. I'm just here to present you with that option. Like, you're supposed to pay 1 billion X tolls to go up there. If you don't want to, I'm going to let you up there anyway. The choice is entirely yours, and that's kind of what I like. So of course, everybody's like, well, yeah, sure. And Luffy's like, well, we're going, Granny. So he's like, okay, what, there's 7 of you? So then they go and they get over to the waterfall, and all of a sudden the ship starts raising up, and they're like, what the hell? And what did they say it was? The Amazon Inspector of Heaven, I'm sorry, what is this thing? It's just, here we go. Oh, here we go. The famous Lobster Express of the White Sea. So apparently it's a lobster that either brings them up like an elevator, and climbs up the side of this waterfall, or somehow flows up the waterfall. I don't know, and they're kind of on it as like a platform. It's actually pretty cool. They start going up. So anyway, so Amazon, though, at the end of it over here, he says, Amazon Inspector of Heaven's Gate reporting, and of course they're going up in there and whatnot. And he says to the omnipotent Kami and his vassals, to the omnipotent Kami and his vassals. It's actually vessels, but the way it's spelled is vassals. So 7 people have illegally entered Godland Skypiea and render heavenly judgment. So obviously that's kind of, sorry, I didn't read that with the authority that I probably normally would have, but just the way it was set up was kind of cool because he's reporting, he's like 7 people have illegally entered Godland Skypiea, and they just like render heavenly judgment. It's just kind of like over. So apparently the 1 billion X tolls, although he presented it as an option, it's really not an option because if you don't pay it, you wind up going in illegally and rendering heavenly judgment. I have no idea what's going to come after them or attack them or what, but I just know that it's a very, very cool thing. So, my chapter question, though, is, what do you think about the whole setup of Heaven's Gate and everything else? Now, as I said, I was under the impression that Skypiea was just an island. That you went up to the sky, it was an island somehow blanketed by clouds floating in the sky, however it may happen. It appears that this is like a whole land. There's several islands, from what Ganfor told them. Island hopping was one of the options he gave them for getting there. And then, of course, there's the White Sea, and there's the White Sea in the upper stratum. Really, what are your thoughts on the whole design of this part of the world, I guess you would say, with the Heaven's Gate and just everything we've seen thus far? So leave your answer in the comments down below. Feel free to hit the thumbs up, the like button if you should think that I deserve it, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We will look forward to catching you in the next one, Nation.
Oh, Robin, you're so sexy. Could you lend me a hand?
One Piece.